Hello, this is Rachel with the Otago Prattville Public Library, and today I am here to show you how to make a tote or book bag out of an old t-shirt. So we're going to start with some scissors and a t-shirt. You can use more or less whatever size you'd like. I believe I have a child's large here. And we're going to kind of straighten it out a little bit. As you can see, the seams are a little crumpled up and things like that just from it being in storage for a while. The first thing we're going to do is use our scissors to cut off the sleeves and the neck of the shirt. And like I said, I want to smooth it out really well before so that we get a nice clean cut, because the area that we're cutting now is going to make our handles. So I'm cutting right up from the underarm of the sleeve on the inside of the seam all the way up to the shoulder, and I'm going to do that on the other side. I'm just setting the sleeves and the collar material aside. We will not be using those for this project, but you can save them to make headbands or really any other fabric type of craft. So I'm going to straighten this other side out and go ahead and do the same thing, this time going from the shoulder to the underarm, but again making sure that I'm inside the seam, just so that we don't have any of those extra frays of thread or seams or things like that, kind of making our handles too bulky. So now we've essentially got a tank top, and we're gonna go ahead and cut along the top and sides of the shirt to make the collar part go away. So I'm using my finger to measure. I did about an inch on either side from the collar, and I just made a small cut to start so that I could get it symmetrical on both sides. And then I'm going to go all the way down to about an inch below where the bottom of the curve of the collar is in the shirt, so that I can really get the fabric a little bit more uniform there. I don't want to go too much further down. You can if you want to, but I don't want to get rid of any of my pattern that's on my shirt. I really like the Build a Better World. This was one of our summer reading themes from years past, and I think it's a really neat one. So it's a fun item to make a book bag out of. So now we've got our top, our handles ready to go, but if you put a book or two in this bag right now, they'll just fall right through the bottom. So of course we need to find a way to secure the bottom, and I don't have a sewing machine nor any hand sewing skills, so we're going to do this the super easy way today. And we're going to start by cutting the side seams up about 4 inches, which is the length of my scissors, as you can see here. And once I cut each seam on each edge, I'm gonna start holding the fabric together on both sides and cutting about 1 inch fringe, 1 inch wide fringe that is about 4 inches deep into the shirt. So I'm using the tip of my thumb to measure. From the knuckle of my thumb to the tip is about the size that I want to go. And that way I don't even need to use a ruler or a marker or anything like that. I'm just able to get somewhat precise cuts without having to do a whole lot of measuring and marking. And I'm just cutting it up to that same 4-inch level all the way across. Now you can make these fringes longer if you desire, longer than 4 inches. That will decrease the depth of your tote bag at the end because the fringes are going to be tied together to secure the bottom of the bag, but it also kind of takes away from some of that space where you'd be able to hold things in your bag. Also, because we're doing a knotting technique to secure the bottom of the bag, you'll notice that there are some small to medium holes between the knots and things like that that just kind of naturally occur. So this bag is perfect for larger, lighter items as opposed to small, heavy items. Like if you put your change in the bottom of this bag, it'll probably fall through those little holes. And once you get about 1/3 of the way or halfway through, you can flip it over and start going from the other side. As you can see, I'm struggling a little bit with those wonky seams. If you want to skip that straightening out that I'm doing pretty consistently, you can always iron the shirt ahead of time as well. And I'm just starting in from the other edge, doing the same technique, and that just makes it a little bit easier to reach and to get a hold of what I'm doing and keep everything in frame as well. Do be careful whenever you're working with scissors, especially if they're fabric scissors, because they can be quite sharp and you don't want anyone getting injured. And it doesn't really matter how many fringes you make, especially if you follow my advice of cutting the front and the back at the same time and having split the seams on the edges first, because we're going to tie the front side and the back side together into one knot to kind of keep it together. So there's the front and the back, and I'm wrapping the pieces around 2 of my fingers so that I can tuck them through. I tuck both pieces through and tighten the loop around to get a nice little knot. And of course, we're going to repeat that with each one. So make sure you've got your front and your back. You don't want to tie side to side because then you'll continue to have a large hole in the bottom, like a really large hole, like a person-sized hole. But if you tie the front to the back using this technique that I'm showing you, it seals the bottom up and makes it into a bag instead of a fringy tank top. So we're going to continue with this tying technique, and you can modify it. My fingers are a little big for this technique for some of the pieces that I cut, just in terms of getting the fabric to fit through the loop logistically when I'm tying the knot. So I like to pull out the 2 ends just to stretch it out and secure the knot a little bit more after I've tied it. You can also, like I almost just did, you could also do the crisscross applesauce type of knot, like you do when you're tying your shoes. But I find that tying them together in one loop like this helps to keep it a little bit more uniform looking and keeps the bottom from being quite so kind of lumpy. Like it kind of wiggles back and forth if you tie the front and the back together the crisscross applesauce way. So I'm just going to continue tying all the way across, front to back, tie the front to the back, and then go from one side of the fringe to the other, just tying the front to the back, one fringe at a time. There we go. I'm going to tie up this last bit and tie it up nice and tight, and then we have pretty much completed our little tote bag. So, like I mentioned, there's little holes in the bottom that kind of naturally happen once you stretch it out a little bit. And that's my final step here, is just to kind of shake it out and let some of that natural space between the knots get spread out so that it has a more uniform height and width. But once it's all spread out and the fringes are kind of aesthetically pleasing, looking equidistant or close to from one another, you're pretty much good to go. And I hope you all enjoy.